All right, hello, what's going on? My name is Rich Ryan, bringing you another video about training, and today we are going to talk specifically about how to set up a training program for DEKAFIT, a Hyrox, a hybrid style event. So obviously there are going to be differences in when you're putting together these plans, but the overarching principles of how to lay everything out are going to be pretty similar. So if you're interested in learning more about like the what that goes into this program, hit me with a like and drop a comment below and like, I don't know, like a muscle emoji or any other type of, or just say yes, something that will let me know that you want to know a little bit more about what behind it. Because this is just going to talk about how and how you can kind of set up your weeks and months leading into your next race. So we're going to talk about endurance training, we're going to talk about strength training, and we're going to talk about speed training and how those can all kind of mix in with the race specificity that you're looking for on a hybrid style training program. All right, let's get into it. So before we really talk about what this actually looks like, I just wanted to go over a couple of the principles when it comes to the aerobic versus the aerobic work versus the intensity work that you're going to be doing. So the 80-20 principles is still going to apply to this, as most of your work should be easy work that you're going to be building your aerobic foundation on. So it's still a distance event no matter how you shake it. So your aerobic capacity is going to be the main limiter if that's not something that you've worked on. So it's real easy to get into this style of training and just start to layer on intensity and really try to hit it hard every day and doing the race specific workouts that are easy to kind of conceptualize just because we know what it looks like. So, but it's kind of like building it's like building a building on a weak foundation, right? So I don't know much about architecture or making a building, but I know you do have to build that foundation first, and you have to dig deep and then smooth it all out and then make sure that you're laying the foundation in an area that is ready, right? And then that way you can build up. So if you're just layering on intensity and doing these race specific things without that first piece, it's going to be like setting up a foundation on like wet concrete and just like building up a janky building and trying to continue to kind of go up. Eventually it's either going to fall, which is injury, or you're just not going to be able to continue to build it because it's not going to be able to sustain that. So it'll hit some sort of plateau. So that's the first thing to really keep in mind here, is that aerobic work is still going to be the main crux of this type of program, just because you're going to need to build that base. So pretty much across the board, 2 days of intensity is really what you're going to need, and the rest of the days are going to be filled with aerobic work or light recovery days. So keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about what these days are actually going to look like. So the strength training when in hybrid racing, it is a little bit complicated because the two events we're talking about with DEKAFIT and the Hyrox's strength demands are pretty opposite. You just need to be strong for both, but but the Hyrox event in particular, you're going to need to have your strength ceiling raised a little bit higher. So they're not going to be apples to apples, but in general, you're going to need to have strength training as a big piece of your program no matter what. If you're coming from typical OCR or even a regular endurance background, there's kind of a floor that you need to reach for your strength. And once you're at that floor, the requirements of the event, it's not necessarily going to help you to be stronger. In a hybrid racing event, or thinking of something like CrossFit, your strength is going to exponentially continue to make you a better athlete in the event. So being stronger is more beneficial than it would be in a regular obstacle course. It's about being able to balance your strength and endurance work so that you are able to meet the demands. But it's also important that you're doing specific strength work to make you stronger. The easiest thing in the world for this, and this is something that I'm seeing a lot, is that you're just mixing your strength work with your endurance work to try to meet the demands of the event. But ultimately, that will leave you too exhausted to run fast and too exhausted to lift heavy if you're doing everything in a high intensity piece here. So just how we talked about with the aerobic work, your strength work needs to be set by itself for the majority of your program. So if we're talking about a 16-week program, there's going to need to be 8 to 12 weeks of days that are just based around your strength work. And this is something I've seen a lot in like a CrossFit setting, where people come in and they do their intensity work with their strength training, like a Metcon, right? You're doing something like Fran, which is thrusters and pull-ups, both the strength events, but done at a higher intensity. So you get that cardio piece in as well. And it works really well for about 4 to 6 months, maybe. And then people stay the exact same for the rest of the time they do CrossFit, because they're not breaking things out. They're not really specifically trying to get better at anything. They're just kind of generally doing all of the things. It's a great way to kind of burn calories and stay in shape, sort of. But if you really want to get awesome at something, like, you need to be very specific on what you're trying to accomplish here. And you can't just like blend it all together, because you're just not going to get good at either of the things. You'll get a little bit good at first, and then again, you're building that skyscraper that is going to be all janky and wobbly. So you want to make sure you are laying that foundation of strength. So 2 to 3 days of strength work is pretty much mandatory, I would say, in this, and building them in 4 to 6 progressive blocks. So separating these from your endurance work completely. So doing things that are going to make you strong, like big compound lifts, and working at higher rep ranges if you want to put on muscle, working on lower rep ranges to put on strength, working at very low weight and low rep ranges to work on your explosive power, and cycling these through just so you're making sure you are getting strength gains along the way. So make sure to follow up about a video on the what to do for strength, in particular when it comes to hybrid racing. And again, hit me with a comment below, hit me with a like to make sure that that is something that you do want to see. So now we're going to talk about endurance, and this is an endurance event. Anything that's going to be over about 90 seconds is really considered an aerobic event, and this is going to be anywhere from 30 minutes to about 2 hours, depending on the race that you're doing and your ability level. So we're clearly stuck into the aerobic system. Now, there's going to be parts in a hybrid race that are going to take you out of your aerobic threshold and kind of work into that anaerobic system, and even maybe into that lactic takeover type of system where the energy is being produced by the production of lactic acid. And that's where you're working really hard. So, but yeah, you only can sustain that for a very short amount of time. So you want to work in those in pieces and not necessarily focus on that here, because most of the work needs to be done is aerobic. So you're going to have to spend a lot of time doing aerobic work, and it goes back up to that 80-20 principle. And the way that you can do this aerobic work depends on your preference. So, and what's nice about hybrid racing is that it doesn't all need to be just running. It can be on the ski erg, it could be on the rower, it could be a blend of them all, which I do recommend. It could be on the assault bike, but anything that's going to sit there and help you develop that aerobic system is going to be crucial here, because that is where you're going to be able to spend enough time. And when you're going slow enough and spending more time at that lower, like zone 2 heart rate, you're going to be able to recover a little bit better. You're going to be able to do more of your hard intensity work. You're going to be able to do a little bit more strength work and make it much more quality if you're spending time building that aerobic system and building that base. So I would recommend doing some sort of aerobic work almost every day and separating it from your strength work. So if you can train twice a day, that's optimal. But if you need to really kind of cut things short on the strength end, work on 1 or 2 big lifts that are going to give you the most bang for your buck, and then filling it in with some aerobic work on the back end, that's ideal. But again, working on them differently and making sure you're getting aerobic work at least 5 days a week for the sake of hybrid racing. And now we're talking about speed, and speed work in particular is kind of a term that gets thrown around for anyone, for any type of workout that is just not easy. But for this particular one, we're going to talk about just raising your ceiling when it comes to how fast you can actually run. So working on fast turnover, doing like speed drills, doing short sprints is really important, especially in that base building phase, and having it be layered into your training pretty much throughout. Maybe 1 day a week where you're just doing really fast sprints. And this could even just be a warm-up or a finisher in like your regular specific type of speed workouts or your high-end threshold type workouts. But making sure you are working on that speed, because this is something that is missed across the board and pretty much all running and endurance events. People want to run their specific pace. They want to spend a lot of time going slow, like we just talked about in their aerobic stuff. But going fast is something that we don't particularly put any type of focus on, because we don't always we don't get there in a race, right? So it doesn't feel race specific. But again, this is all about building the pieces, and to get faster, you have to run fast. A tempo run or an anaerobic threshold repeats, the pace is laughably slow when we're talking about a 200 to 400 meters. Like, it's not fast running, so it's not really speed work. It's like strength work. It's like speed strength work, but it's not speed. So spending time working on really short sprints is really gonna help your efficiency. It's gonna help you create a like higher output, and it's gonna help your strength in general. And having those gears is an important part of being an all-around athlete. And to be good at these hybrid races, you're going to need to be an all-around athlete here. So I'd recommend 1 day a week putting in some sort of speed drills or some sort of faster sprints where we're just talking about like 20-second sprints as fast as you can go with a tremendous amount of recovery in between, making sure you're hitting the power and going as fast as you can every single time. That'll help get you faster. So I think that should be a part of this program as well. And then finally, what I want to touch on a little bit is what the competition and pre-competition phase are going to look like in terms of when to put those in. So depending on how much time you have to lead into your program, I would have a 4 to 8 week phase of your pre-competition where, again, you're building the pieces. So doing things like threshold work, doing things like 400s and 200s, anaerobic threshold work, and lactic takeover type of work, things that are going to kind of build that up. And then maybe also some of like the more race specific type of things where you're pushing the sled a little bit faster, where you're doing like maybe more Metcon stuff, where you're doing high intensity things, moving in and out of your transitions, just to work on that skill a little bit, but not necessarily meeting the full demands of the race. Save those workouts for the last 6-8 weeks at most, but last 4 to 6 weeks of really hitting it hard and doing more race specific style workouts where you are able to kind of blend all of these pieces together and take the demands of your Hyrox, of your DEKAFIT, and then put them in practice on in the gym or on any type of like high-end workout that you're doing. So again, this is just about how to kind of structure things. Hit me with a comment. Drop a comment below, or hit me with a like to let me know if you want to know the what behind everything. So here is what the program in general is going to kind of look like from like a skeleton perspective. So the first 1 to 4 weeks, is going to be your base phase. And this could be anywhere from 4 to 12 to 16 weeks if you want to progressively build over time. So if you have a ton of time, or you're really starting at a very low end with the endurance and you're just kind of getting into things, I would stretch this out and even see how you compete where you're just doing base work without getting overwhelmed at needing to be 100% prepared for what it's going to feel like to run after the assault bike or to push that sled. Doing your base strength and your base running work can probably get you in pretty good shape. So I would recommend not rushing this and stretching it out as much as you need to, but definitely at least 1 to 4 weeks here. So you're going to be looking at a regular strength base workout, which is going to be what I would consider anywhere from that like 5 to 10 rep range. We're just working on the movements and working on getting stronger. And then doing some aerobic endurance, whether that's running, rowing, or skiing. Tuesday's just straight up aerobic work. Wednesday would be same as Monday with the option of doing aerobic work if you have time. Thursday would be some of those speed drills and then some more aerobic work. And then Friday, same as Monday, and then Saturday, aerobic work. Sunday was long aerobic. So that could be a long run. It could be a mixture between rowing, skiing, biking, and running, just blending it all together, but making sure that you're stretching things out a little bit longer. You can go 70, 90, 120 minutes and beyond with this, because when you're getting on the bike and on the rower and things like that, it's going to take away the pounding that running would typically do. So don't be afraid to go even a little bit longer than what you might be comfortable with on your run, on your aerobic work when it comes to this hybrid training. And then when we get into like the pre-competition phase, the template's going to be pretty similar where we're going to be working on strength. So in this particular example, we're talking about strength power. So to be working at lower rep ranges at a higher velocity so that you're able to recruit and do as much power as possible on each movement, which you will need. And then again, just layering in with aerobic endurance and then some speed drills, and then working on some anaerobic thresholds. So that'd be doing things like 3 by mile with a minute rest at that right around that anaerobic threshold. So bumping up right where it becomes a little bit too uncomfortable to go, but just sitting in that spot that is just like kind of terrible, but not really terrible. And then Wednesday, aerobic work, strength optional. Some speed drills and fast reps with some aerobic endurance. So that would be doing like 200s and then working in some longer running there. On Friday is just regular strength and aerobic endurance. Saturday, speed drills with anaerobic threshold again. So we're adding an extra day of quality here, but making sure you're in a good spot so it's not incredibly difficult. And then the following week, if this following one, the weeks 9 through 12, The main differences are going to be you're going to be cranking up the speed a little bit, and on Tuesday and on Saturday, where you're going to be working in that really faster rep range to get ready for what it's going to feel like for that lactic takeover on something like the sled or the bike. And you can use that in your workouts as well. Something that is going to be really fast, really hard, that's going to elicit that response where it's going to take you beyond that anaerobic threshold and put you in that really uncomfortable zone. So I would reserve that for the weeks leading into 9 to 12. And then in your competition phases where you're going to want to start to add in some of the more compromised race-specific stuff once or twice a week so that you've built all the pieces now. Now you got to put them into place and making sure that those are going to work for you and that you're going to be familiar with the demands of the race and that you're just going to be feeling ready to rock with that. So I hope this was helpful. Again, just learning how to kind of lay everything out, and then you can be creative when putting in different workouts and how that's all going to work. But make sure you just are spending time doing different stuff. At the end of this, just like, that's the main thing. Just don't do the same shit for 16 weeks because you'll get better for maybe 10 of them and then you'll just plateau or get worse. So make sure you're switching things up every 4 weeks or so and being smart in terms of like how you're going to like progress things out. And again, if you want to know a little bit more about the what, you can kind of stick into here the exact workouts of what it was going to look like on a strength end, on a speed end, on the race specific end. Just drop a comment below. Just say yes or hit me with that muscle emoji, whatever that is. Hook me up. And of course, you can hit the alert button if you do want to get any of the updates. So when I do drop a new video and it's something that you are looking for, you know that it's coming directly out to you. All right, cool. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.